Hello everyone. Again, I'm Kshitis from Yukon Health. I have the tag to show to you. Today we are going to talk about what to look for in a lab rotation. Now, you are an undergrad or a master's student and have applied for a PhD and gotten into your PhD program. And some of the programs would have an option that you could do rotation for, say, a year, or in my case, when I was doing my PhD at Johns Hopkins, it was 2 years. I think it was a bad idea. But many universities, including my own university right now, has it for about a year. And the idea is that you could go to different labs, get to experience those labs, and make the right decision. But obviously, when you're doing and you either you must make a decision, or the university or the department helps you make a decision based on what really fits, right? There might be working styles in the lab, techniques that they use in the lab, and so on and so forth. So if you get a choice of doing rotations, what are the things to make sure that you understand about it so that you make the best use of it, as well as how to plan for a rotation? So let me tell you this. When you go and approach a professor that I want to rotate in your lab, you might find two kind of professors. One set will always be okay with everybody, very promiscuous in terms of getting any student intern that they want. There's another set of professors, which I guess I belong to, who are very, very careful. They will not take a potential intern or a potential rotation student in their lab unless and until they have an opening in their lab they really want to fill. They might occasionally consider a person in the rotation, but they would tell the rotation students very clearly that you may not have a chance to actually fit in our lab because we don't have the resources, or we do not want to expand. So make sure that you're actually going to, if you're going to the first set of professors who are very happy to give you the experience in the lab, that are you really going there to just get an experience, or you are actually planning to join that lab? When you're a student, as I was, you're very naive. You don't know how a lab really works. You think that, oh, I love this work, I love this area, I'm interested in neuroscience, I'm interested in AI, I'm interested in a particular, robotics, or I want to work on a particular disease, let's say, say heart attack, or any kind of a cardiovascular disease, whatever your interest is, right? And those interests would change. Some people wanted to work on, like in my area, in biology, cell biology, molecular biology, genetics. Many people don't even know what they actually mean. What they think is cell biology is not really cell biology at all. At least I knew very, very little when I joined the PhD program. And so my naive view at that point of time, about going many decades, is that, oh, I am interested in this area and I will go and do a rotation in this area, and that's all I care about. That eventually I will join this area if I like it. So remember, the very first lab I joined, I won't name the professor, was an excellent rotation, was in neuroscience, because I was interested in neuroscience. I always thought I came from computer science, I might like neuroscience, but it was a molecular biology, very imaging based lab. I loved it, but at the same time I also came to know that that was not the lab for me, that was not the area for me. So how do you make these decisions? I think there are a few things that many students, of course, interest matter, the kind of lab, the kind of area. Those are naive things. You already know it. I don't have to tell you that. But what are the other important considerations you must have in mind so that you can make the best use of rotation? Number one, do not enter a lab unless you're very clear that the lab is opening available, so that if you do this rotation, you might have a way that you could join the lab if you like it, right? And if the professor likes you, of course, it goes both ways. And make sure you know about this equation. If you know that the lab does not really have an opening, then you consider whether it is useful for me to intern in the lab in order to learn, say, a technique which that lab may be working on. Let's say the lab has a very fancy microscope that is available only in that lab, and so you may get a way to learn the technique which may be helpful for you in your research in a different area. So keep that mind open, okay? Don't just walk in and spend 3 months of your life or 2 months of your life in doing a rotation which is not going to be productive. Learn to be productive, learn to be efficient with your life. It's very, very common in the PhD students, I notice, and all through the academic career in general, that the value of time is very little. It is not really measured in the way it should be measured. So value that. Now, what are the other consideration? Lot of students think, and because many universities tend to have post rotation period, some kind of a presentation or some kind of a seminar by all the rotating students, and so that's what they really invest their time on, that I can get something out of it. Well, my view differs here a little bit from most of the other professors, though, there's no really right or wrong here. Is that you should really try to make use of your time into the rotation, not to do a project, but to make sure that you understand that that lab is for you. You're going to be in that lab if you join the lab for many, many, many years to come, okay? If it's a computational group, you're going to join the group for many, many years to come. You want to understand the dynamics. You want to understand how the professor works, how the professor treats his students, how the professor treats a student when the student should be disciplined, more. And so it goes both ways, right? And how are conflicts resolved? What are the general attitudes in the lab? Okay, are people just lonely wolves in the lab doing their own projects, or they actually collaborate? And what kind of environment would you fit in compared to, based on your own personality? Where would you be more comfortable? Are people presenting a lot? What kind of a structure the lab has? Does it have a lot of postdocs? Does it have a lot of grad students? Does it have a lot of interns that keep coming in, right? So look at those aspects and really make sure that you make use of that time to understand these things about the lab. This is an investigative time for you in the lab, rather than actually accomplishing a project. You will have enough time to accomplish a project. Okay, so if you just go and say, you know what, I'm going to go in the lab, and then all you do is come in the morning and leave in the evening, learning of a particular technique, if that's not your objective, right? And then go away with probably a small presentation that you would be able to do after 2 or 3 months of work. To be very frank, I think it's a waste of effort. The rotation is typically not designed for that purpose. But when you decide to do a small project, some people say, think that they would absorb how a lab really functions, but they don't spend the time in learning everything possible about the lab, the attitude, the camaraderie, the way people are, as I say, look out for conflicts as they arise and how people are resolving those conflicts. Keep an eye. You also have to notice you're much younger than everybody else in the lab. So you need to look at that from that vantage point of experience, where others are at a different vantage point than you are. How are people dealing with this, right? So look at all of that. And even though you may be the most unique person in the world, think of yourself like it would be at least some partly a combination of the people in the lab I would end up becoming. So if they're very morose and depressed by the time they're finishing their PhD, that's likely you, okay? And if they're super excited and they're always, able to not have that sense of exhaustion, that's likely you too. So look for those signs and make sure that you pick the lab that matches your personality. Some people actually do not like to be bothered very much, right? They want to meet their advisor once in a certain frequency, and then they want to just shut, the blinkers and work on a project. And they don't want to be in a place where it's it's a place for very extroverted people. I'm probably I'm not introvert or extrovert, but I would be probably very uncomfortable, where every day there is some kind of a game, or every day there is some kind of a dart throwing competition. There are labs in computer science that used to be like that, or people would go gaming. Just me. Nothing wrong with that. Probably that's much more normal than I was, but that was just not me, right? So you need to know whether, you're comfortable with that. And at the same time, there are other labs where pretty much nobody really interacts with anybody else at all. except in office hours, in which they're very, very professional. And that can also be a turn off for many people. So make sure my lab probably is a little bit like that, but make sure that you are able to find what matches your personality. Most people will be, in between different extremes in different ways, right? So think about yourself as think of rotation as an opportunity for you to learn these. And second, as I mentioned, make sure that if you like the lab and if the lab likes you, it's a convertible ticket that you would get into the lab. If the lab has no resources, has no interest in bringing another student, right, then you are going to be wasting your time. And I have seen many, many students each year there would be at least 10 to 20% students who end up not finding the lab at all. And then they are really struggling to find any lab that the department would help to get them to, which may not be of their liking at all. So make sure you make use of the rotation period. It is a lot of investment by most of the departments to give you a rotation period because you are getting your stipend. So nobody who's paying your stipend? Well, the stipend is paid by the department, right? It's coming out of certain funds. So basically it's a free time for you, and you should make use of that free time as much as possible so that you can make a most optimal choice for your PhD. Okay, so I'll see you next time. Till then, goodbye.